But now we are
Hi.
serious.
We are. This is serious time because it doesn't get more serious than Lord of the Rings. Do I sound like a newscaster?
A little
Hello.
bit. Or you're
Hello
preparing for
and
your job
welcome.
at NPR to exclusively talk about Lord of the Rings.
I'm NPR. If you're listening, I'm ready for that offer. I can do this. Syndicate me. Hello and welcome to Talking with Friends. That's my impersonation of the guy from Parks and
Parks
Rec.
and Rec.
Yeah. I just love the what is it? And now it's time for jazz plus jazz equals jazz.
Yes.
It's my favorite thing.
Or he was the second time they cut, he's like, noisy lesbians playing the drums. Or whatever it was. It was like something
Yeah.
really random.
Yeah. I love that. I love NPR and I love making fun of NPR. So I don't know how that will help us get on NPR, but if they're listening, I'm willing to figure it out. But hi, and it's Talking with Friends. And in today's episode, we're covering the chapters A Shortcut to Mushrooms and A Conspiracy Unmasked, and less than 10 minutes of the film. It's like
Two
and it's
boops.
short.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I knew it was gonna be short, and I guesstimated 10 minutes, and I was pretty close. It was just under
Wow.
10 minutes. Because it's literally in the movie. It immediately the next shot is Gandalf riding into Isengard, talking to Saruman, wizard duel, and then Frodo running into Merry and Pippin in Farmer Maggot's crops. They run into some Nazgul. It's like the implication of them being chased all day because it's daytime when they first see the Nazgul, and then it cuts to it being nighttime, and they're like, "What was that?"
Yeah.
And then they escape the Nazgul by getting on the Buckleberry Ferry.
I think
That's literally it.
about how I want to see a Nazgul crawling on the ground and like sniffing and licking things. I've thought about that like at least once a day since you've told me.
Since we last talked,
Yeah.
it's like, because they really do harp on the sniffing, and I'm great, and it's great that they do sniff in the movie, but there's
That's
not
true.
that super like the highest tension we get besides like the ultimate confrontation that we see later. The first time that we see them is the most that we see them, besides them being on horses. At this point in the movie, like, we've seen him and he's on the horse and they're under that little hollow of that tree, and he does make the sniffing sounds, but he doesn't like get on the ground. And like the moment and they do see them again at night, but they're on horses this time. There's no them like in the darkness. You can kind of make it out like it like that. They could have done it.
Yeah.
They
And
could have done it.
as just a movie watcher, I definitely didn't realize that that's what they were doing with sniffing. I just thought it was
Mm-hmm.
like a intense, like, I don't know, sound or thing that they were doing to like emphasize their movements. But to now know that they're like sniffing is really creepy.
I
And
know.
I love that.
Yeah, they are super creepy. And yeah, they're super creepy. And it's like there's a moment in was it last no it's this chapter. They're trying to get away from, so this immediately after they wake up after seeing the elves, and they're like, at first they're like, hey, like, they're feeling pretty good that morning, like they don't feel like they know they're being pursued, but they're like kind of walking it off, if that makes sense. And they are in the woods, they're still undercover, and so they feel kind of safe in a way, and they're eating and taking a break, and they start singing, and that's when they first hear the call, and that's when they realize that there's more than one. So they hear it like, ah, like the
Yeah.
I'm not gonna scream into the
Wait.
microphone, but like, but they hear it, one closer and one further away, and that's when they're like,
Oh, snap.
yeah, like, they were feeling, it's like when you're feeling like, and then it's like that anxiety again, and so they are like afraid to move or leave, but then they finally do, and that's when they run into Farmer Maggot
In the books.
in the
Yeah,
books.
yeah.
Yeah. So we can talk Farmer Maggot, or we could talk Wizard Duel.
Um, Wizard Duel is dope.
Okay,
I I
we'll start Wizard Duel.
rewatching. Yes, I rewatch when I was rewatching the movie
Hmm.
in preparation to talk to you. I was like, wow, they went for it. It's so good. Ian and
Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee, they're they're they've got good chemistry. So it really feels like he feels so betrayed, and he's like, fuck, now I have to, sorry, now I have to
Have fun.
now I have to fight my like mentor, this
Yeah.
sucks. um and I would assume that the creators of Harry Potter, I honestly don't remember which movie it is, it's maybe 5, where Dumbledore is battling Voldemort,
Oh yeah.
and
Hmm.
it is like one of the most, like, I think, beautiful like fight sequences in
It
that
was.
particular movie. They had to have been inspired by this because it's so dynamic and interesting.
Yeah. I know, and it's like that is because most of the time, like obviously the movies take magic and Middle Earth kind of like up to a 10 probably, but I was just talking about this with Josh about how magic in Middle Earth is so subtle. And not because it always has been, because in the Silmarillion we see Sauron, like he, like as a Maya he can shapeshift, like you don't have, they just choose a form that they like, and like he's a vampire sometimes, and they have werewolves, and some of the elves even have the type of magic to change the way they appear, so that they can be orcs, or like they can be like Luthien and Baron, they disguise themselves as also a vampire and a werewolf, like, so there's stuff like that. um but in the Lord of the Rings, the books, everything is so much more subtle, and I think
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien preferred it on, in some ways to like Harry Potter type magic, right? Like everything is like the magic of the ring, like he's imbued his spirit into it, and it's not like shooting sparks or anything, but it can like subtly change things. And I was talking about how like Saruman's magic, like obviously like we go on to see him like inventing something like gunpowder and for Two Towers, to try to take down the wall there. But his main ability, the thing that you have to watch out for, is his voice, because he can get you to like, it's not just what he's saying or how he's saying it, but like the literal like properties of his voice are able to get you to start believing or thinking a certain way
Mm-hmm.
that he wants you to. So it's like if you're susceptible to it, then you can easily become like under his sway, and like Gandalf, I think he never really shows like his full power. I don't even think when he's Gandalf the White that he does. But his, because he kind of like sticks to the job, and that's like guiding and supporting the peoples of Middle Earth to fight evil. So that like he's the like the best supporting actor, literally, if if you want to put it in those terms. Like his role is not to be the lead, but you see it in these moments of like being able to shed light on things, or like when he casts some kind of spell to help them get away from like the Balrog or whatever. Um, in the books, we'll see, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like crafting. It's like it's much on a different scale. Like when you see with Theoden later, and him like helping him kind of leave Saruman's, I don't know what the word is, but like under his kind of uh dominion in a way. Um but here we get to see them like go at it,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was like, it's a very cool scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting because in the books, we Frodo is told, we're in the books we are pretty much always seeing things from the Hobbit's perspective. Like whenever we change things, it's like usually Frodo and Sam or Merry and Pippin, or that's kind of, I think, why he splits them up, because then we're always seeing it from like the little guy's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so from what we see, we have no idea why Gandalf hasn't shown up. We don't find out until we see him again in Rivendell, but here they've kind of, adjusted things so that we're kind of following along as things happen. And so we do see Gandalf figure out that Saruman is a traitor, essentially, but then we don't see him again until Rivendell. And I think it's probably like a good choice insofar as narratively speaking, like when you're like cinematically, like, because Gandalf literally says like, I'm gonna go see Saruman, and which he doesn't say to Frodo because he doesn't know that's what he's about to do. But we don't know that yet in the book, so can't talk about it.
Uh-oh.
Otherwise, what are we going to talk about? No, I'm just kidding. So he knows that he has, so he leaves to go figure some stuff out. But plans to be back in time for Frodo's birthday, but he never does.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just kind of see Frodo trying to manage that situation as best he can. But I think that, like, for like a movie going audience, it's like, for pacing purposes, it's probably helpful to see him go do that and then kind of lose that battle in a way and then cut back to Frodo, so then you're more like, oh no, what's gonna happen now?
Yeah, totally.
Because it's like Gandalf is, just seeing four little hobbits go at against some Nazgul by themselves. It's pretty scary.
Yeah, and you're like, oh
daunting.
no, what are they gonna do?
Yeah. So that's pretty much where the movie leaves us. So now I think we can talk about what isn't in the movies. And primarily, that's Farmer Maggot. So, let's see. Now, in the movie, Farmer Maggot is really just like a way to get Merry and Pippin on the journey.
Mm-hmm.
He's just kind of like, you see his scythe and him being like,
oh, come back here.
Yeah, get off my lawn kind of situation. Which isn't like wrong as far as characterization, sort of. It's really a nod. I think it's like getting Merry and Pippin there, and kind of a nod to, in the books, Frodo, when they realize that they're on Farmer Maggot's property. Like I was saying before, he's like nervous about it because he does not want to run into Farmer Maggot, because he used to steal mushrooms from him as a tween, and for a tween for a hobbit is like before 33, so like in your 20s.
Yeah,
which I think is funny, and I want to adopt this age system.
that just seems right.
Yeah, like coming of age at 33, absolutely.
I mean, it definitely tracks more, I feel like
right,
you don't
with
really,
like the way your brain develop and everything.
yes,
Don't expect me to be an adult at 18.
no one knows what they're doing. Barely people know what they're doing at 30.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of when you start getting your act together.
Yeah. So I don't know who I need to petition to adopt the Hobbit coming of age system.
Yes.
But
well, only we lived as long as hobbits.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what was it? I think they're only supposed to live to be like 100, maybe a little over 100.
Oh.
Yeah. They're not that much. And I should have looked up the age expectancy when Tolkien was alive.
Oh.
Is it slightly less? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we
like
live longer, like, the further into
right
age we go. I mean, like, time age.
Time. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So maybe we'll look that up and bring it up next time.
Yeah.
But
some notes for next time.
Someone remind me. No, I'm just kidding. But they're like 100-ish.
Okay.
Like Bilbo is 111 at the beginning of the book, and everyone's calling him like well preserved. You know, like they're like, pretty good. But then some people are disappointed when they die at like 105. Like I feel like hobbits are weirdly competitive about their age,
I didn't
like
know
trying to
that.
be yeah, but it's like 100-ish.
Okay.
I think it's about right. How did we get talking about that?
We were talking about Frodo stealing mushrooms when he was a baby.
Tweet. Yeah. Okay. So Frodo's upset, and then but Pippin's like, "No, Farmer Maggot's cool. Mary takes me to see him sometimes." Because if you remember, Mary has gone ahead with their friend Frediger to set up Frodo's um, house that he's retiring to. I mean, he did legitimately buy this house to retire to make it seem, to just be like, I'm
Legitimize the journey a little bit.
yeah, so people don't talk as much, even though they will. So he meets up with Frodo, and he doesn't immediately act like he recognizes the name, but he does say like, "Oh, like literally a creeper dude was just here asking for a Baggins," and I assumed it was asking for Bilbo. Um, and so, like, based on what we know about hobbits and the Nazgul, like, how would you expect?
Well, that's what I can't help but laugh, being like, "Oh, some like figure all in black and scary was asking for you," and I was just like, "Oh, he's down the road. It's no big deal." Versus like, I pooped my pants, and
Yeah,
he went to go ask someone else because I was petrified with fear, so I couldn't answer it.
I don't. That's why I've always kind of thought that the there's a hobbit that in the movie the
Yeah.
Nazgul sees, and he's like, Shire Baggins,
Mhm.
and he's like, oh, they're up in Hobbiton, and he has a dog, and the only other hobbit that we see with dogs is Farmer Maggot. So I'm like, that could also be him. Like, but Farmer Maggot does not act like that when he meets the Nazgul.
Mhm.
He's very much upset. Like, he does feel fear. Like, he describes it as a shiver when he sees the guy, and but he's mostly mad that he's like all up in his property. Like, the
Mm.
gate was open, he's like right up to his door on his horse, and like, so if you can imagine the scale of that, like, a full grown man who is literally thousands of years old
Uh-huh.
because he is in the spirit realm now on a real
Which are
person,
big.
yeah,
Yeah, horses are
horse.
huge.
Yeah, and he's got his dogs, but his dogs kind of like yelp and run away. So he's like up against it, and he's like, "Well, I don't see why you should. That doesn't give you the right to be on my property." And he's like, "You know what? Baggins don't live around here." And the ring wraith is like, "Well, I'll come back with gold." Like, he's like, "I know Baggins is close. I'll come back with gold if you tell me if you see him." And he's like, Psh, "No, get out of here!" And the ring wraith like hisses at him, and he's like, "It could have been a laugh. It could have been not." And I'm like, that description is so spooky.
Such a
And
weird
then
interaction.
I know. And then the guy like almost runs him over and leaves. And then Frodo shows up, not, I don't know, maybe half an hour or something later, which is why. So it's like they're having all these close encounters, but then they like stop to hang out at Farmer Maggot's, even though they know, because they cannot say no to food, essentially. Um, and then Farmer Maggot tells them all of this, and Frodo's obviously not really explaining much to him, and he's like, I can see that you're not telling me, but I'm not gonna ask. He's like
Mhm.
very considerate of Frodo, and like they later Mary gives this description that like Farmer Maggot is a shrewd fellow. A lot goes on behind his round face that does not come out in his talk. Um, and so I think that, and he also like eventually they talk about the old forest, like that's their next step. So Farmer Maggot uh, feeds them and offers to drive them to Buckleberry Ferry so that they don't have to walk it, and then they have like kind of a respite, and they're maybe a little bit more protected on this cart, you
Yeah.
know.
What
And
he does that because I was like, "Oh yeah, that was sketchy."
yeah,
I'll
exactly.
Sorry, I
He's like,
gave you
I can
up.
tell that you're being followed and you are scared, so I'm gonna offer to like let you guys have dinner with us, and then I'm gonna take you down to Buckleberry Ferry. And then they meet Mary there, and he was like, it tries to psych you out as if they're gonna run into another ring wraith, but it's Mary, like in
Mm,
a he's like wearing a scarf because it's foggy and stuff, and they're
sure.
like, their fear just makes them think that he was bigger than he was. And so then they take the ferry to his house, which is called Crick Hollow, which I always thought was cute. It's a cute name.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where they kind of talk more about what's happened, and Merry and Pippin explain that like they pretty much know everything that's been going on so far. And Frodo feels a little betrayed, but this is also when Merry they talk about next steps, and they decide that they want to do everything that they can to avoid the ring wraiths, and even they don't know, they call them Black Riders at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what they are.
Of course.
And so they talk about going through the old forest, and their friend Frediger, who they call Fatty, which I don't know how I feel about that. But he's like, you don't want to go through the old forest, and they're like, well, we definitely will run into these guys on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, nobody goes into the old forest, it's spooky. And Mary's like, the Brandy Bucks do. So they decide to go that way. And then Mary, when he's talking about Farmer Maggot, he said that I've heard that he used to go into the old forest at one time, and he has the reputation of knowing a good many strange things. And I was actually reading a little bit, and there was a version of the beginning of Lord of the Rings where he almost made Farmer Maggot like a character like Tom Bombadil, who we're gonna see in the next episode,
Okay.
who is essentially kind of like otherworldly, but then he decided to make him like a hobbit, essentially. But he's very smart, he knows what is up,
Ooh.
essentially. So he's like one of those characters where like I totally understand cutting him, but I do think that he shows kind of like the breadth of hobbits. Like we see them being silly and kind of, we see the ones that are like talking about queer folk abroad, and like, thinking that if they just stay in the Shire and stay out of trouble, that no trouble will come to them. And then he's a little bit more worldly.
Mm-hmm.
He knows a little bit more about what's going on. And also like he shooed a ring wraith, so
It definitely would have helped expand that world, that part of the world.
yeah. So like I totally get cutting him, but I do think he's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a cool guy.
I mean, he was like, go away,
Yeah,
like, please stop bothering me. He's in the next town over,
yeah. And I love that he offers, he's like, hey Frodo, like I always was worried when I heard that you were moving in to Hobbiton, like those guys are weird over there. And Sam is like, not cool, but he's like, if you come back and live among sensible folk, like if that guy comes back, I'll tell him you're dead, I'll tell him you've left, I'll tell him whatever you want.
My
And I'm like,
gosh.
like, you haven't seen Frodo in like 30
Yeah.
years. You're a real one, Farmer
He's a
Maggot.
G.
Yeah. So I just, if you're listening and you haven't read the books, I think he's one of those characters where it's like, yeah, I get cutting him, but I really do love him.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any like characters like that in Game of Thrones, Anna, where it's like, yeah, I can see why you cut them because of, for the show, but I
Yeah.
really did like him.
And let me find this character's name real quick. I think I know, but I did have it right. Okay, so I'm also going to start off by saying I don't know the exact like politically correct words to use, but so
For what?
so I'll get into it. I'll get into
All
it.
right, all right.
So in the TV show, Peter Dinklage's character Tyrion, when he gets saved by Varys, and he's being taken to Essos to not get killed because Joffrey just died, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is crazy!"
Yeah.
And he kind of he was with Varys, and then he gets kidnapped by. Hold on, pregnancy brain, help me, Josh.
What?
Tyrion gets kidnapped by the guy with the grayscale. Jorah, sorry.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
he gets kidnapped by Jorah, and then they make it to see Dany. Well,
Mhm.
it doesn't happen like that in the books. Tyrion actually finds himself coming into contact with a bunch of different characters as he is fleeing and forcefully being fleed.
Mhm.
And he runs into this group of people, one of them being a fellow little person with
Mhm.
dwarfism.
Yeah.
Her name is Penny, and she's mad at him because her brother was actually killed because Cersei sent out that
Oh, like a
the
hitman or
hitman,
something?
yeah, to be like, bring me my brother. He's a dwarf and he has a scar. So basically, lots of dwarves were being sent to her dead, and one of them was her brother. So when she found out that this person that she was traveling with was the person that,
The guy.
yeah, that her brother died because they were searching for him. It's like
Oof.
this interesting dynamic of like her being mad, but then them like sticking up for each other, and then they end up both being slaves together for this other house in.
Mhm.
Uh, it's really complicated like chain of events, but I think the interactions with them is really interesting because throughout the whole series, he talks about, he's alone. He feels like he's such a freak um,
Mm.
because he doesn't know another, like another little person, because basically the only reason why he's alive is because he was son of Tywin. Usually people who have this genetic disorder are killed, or they're made slaves, or they're in like they
Wow.
get forced into like a circus situation, which is what Penny was.
Hmm.
So I found it to be very interesting for Tyrion's character to have these experiences with someone like him.
Yeah.
um, and you don't get to see that in the TV shows.
Yeah.
There's that long strain of he feels alone. They remind viewers quite often that he's very aware of his condition, and um, I get why they cut all of that, like the whole him just being with Jorah and going straight to Dany. That's
Right.
much
They're
more
like, we already know
linear.
these characters. We gotta shoop shoop.
Yeah. And what's interesting is like, well, in the book, they don't like they don't make it there. Like that is still something that
Mm.
is unknown to readers if they make it to
Ah.
Dany. But in the TV show, I get why they cut out all of those extra characters, why they cut out all of those extra points along the way, because it's just a lot and it's unnecessary, and it is a lot more of character building and world building than it necessarily. But I also don't know. I don't know if it's story
Important or
plot
not?
line important because
Yeah.
that book hasn't come out yet. But
That's
I,
rough.
yeah, it's weird. But I think
Yeah.
that having that character development in that way for that character was really interesting and valid, and we don't get to see that in the TV show.
Yeah. I think that the Lord of the Rings movie does cut out a lot of stuff like that. And it's like I get it. Like as far as like character building, like we were talking about before with Merry and Pippin are just kind of like shoved into this adventure, and so many of their lines get cut in the movie, and like they are like key players along this adventure. They make so many things happen without even knowing what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
but these first few chapters are where we're kind of getting to know them and getting to see their relationship with Frodo, and seeing like multiple sides of Frodo as well, because like one thing that I have always loved, like about book Frodo is that he is like a multifaceted guy. Like we were talking about him dealing with the elves and being really knowledgeable and worldly, but he does kind of like people act like Elijah Wood's version of Frodo or like whatever Peter Jackson made Elijah Wood do. It's like kind of like whiny or whatever, but he does have moments where I'm like, Frodo, why are you that you're rude. Um like there's a moment where when they first leave Bag End and he's like, "Ugh, I'm sure you guys have given me all the heaviest stuff. Like, why did I decide to walk?"
In the
And Pippin
books.
is like, "Yeah," and Pippin is like, "Uh, shut up." You know, he's like you're the one that wanted to walk, and also like you get used to it, buddy. And Sam goes, "Oh, I'm sure I could take more." And then Frodo, that's when Frodo was like, "Oh, like I'm sorry, Sam. That is no, you definitely have taken more than your fair share. I'm just being a butt."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And then there's a moment here in a conspiracy unmasked where Frodo is trying to work up the courage to tell them like, "Hey guys, I'm actually leaving the Shire and nobody could know where I'm going or I can't even use my name." You know, he's like trying to figure out how he's going to tell them that. And Mary's like, "I can help. We know exactly what you're up to and we know that you're leaving the Shire. We know about the ring." And like he's like, "I knew about the ring because Bilbo tried to avoid the Sackville Bagginses this one time, and I just kind of like kept an eye on him. And
Oh.
ever since Bilbo left the Shire, you know, a few years ago, we've been keeping an eye on you." And he was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I can tell you our chief conspirator right now." And he's like, "Who is it?" And then it's Sam. Sam,
Sam!
yeah, like Sam told them about like the conversation with Gandalf. He told them about the deal with Sauron and how he knows, you know, they're basically up to speed essentially. And Frodo was, and they're like, "Yeah." And then Pippin's like, "We're coming with you." And then Frodo also gets mad at Sam. He's like, "Can I not trust anybody?" And immediately hurts Sam's feelings. Sam is immediately like, "Oh, like I was trying to do it to help you." And then
Yeah.
Mary's like, "Hey, it all depends on what you want. Like, do you want to do this by yourself or do you want like your best friends to be there to back you up?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know, it's like you can trust that we will keep your secrets better than you, you know?"
And I think they had to cut that from the movie. So then when he does it at the end of Fellowship of the Ring, you really feel like, oh, he left them. Everyone is sad. You know, this was such a,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I love that they're like, "Dude, we know exactly what we're up." I mean, they don't know exactly, but they think they know what they're in for.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "You know what, man? We don't want you to have to do this by yourself." And, you know, Gandalf told you to, like Gildor told you to bring people you could trust. And Frodo was like, "That's true. Elves told me to bring people I trust." So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one thing. That's a like a minor change where Frodo's or Sam says to Frodo, you know, don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee." And he says that Gandalf, it's, you know, something Gandalf's told him before he left, which I think makes a lot of sense. Like you, like I love that they kept it but gave it to Gandalf as something to said instead of like Gildor, this elf that we see like one time ever,
Yeah.
tells Sam to, you know, keep up, you know, to stay with Frodo no matter what. And Sam is all like, "Of course, you know, I'll if you know we see those Black Riders again, they'll have to deal with Samwise Gamgee." And it's like, oh, they are literally undead
Yeah.
beings, you precious baby.
He doesn't know. But
I
he's
know,
going to
but it's
stand
so
up for his
sweet.
BFF no matter what.
I know. Relatable.
Yeah, I feel that too.
So they all agree to go with Frodo, and I think that that is. I think it's good to know that Merry and Pippin were in it for the long haul,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because then there's a part in the Council of Elrond that we'll talk about soon where they like continue to double down on this, and I just think it's the greatest.
Nice.
Because like the theme of not just fellowship but friendship runs deep, you know?
That is
Like
that is a big theme that they're working with.
yeah. And I love that it's like even when we know that they get separated and they're like all across the map, you know. But they're all still thinking about Frodo and Sam, and they're still, doing what they can to try to help each other, even when it gets really rough, and Frodo and Sam are by the miles away from anybody they know, and they're like they want to give up, but it's like they know that their friend, just like the knowledge that your friends are still out there doing the thing, like they're all still very aware of that. I don't think anybody ever entertains the idea that any other member of the fellowship has given up
Mm-hmm.
at any point that I can think of, and I think that's lovely.
That is a nice sentiment.
Hmm.
That is.
So at that point, they they're about to, and one other thing that I love, that I think that like you and Alex appreciate, is that like Frodo's like, okay, well, you guys are coming, but like, are we like, what all do we have to do to set off as soon as possible? Because he asked Mary like, how fast could the Nazgul, like the Black Riders, be here? And he's like, well, they could have been here by now, but there's no way that the people at the gate would have let them in because they're spoopy. But it's not like Buckland could take an attack from them, so maybe, I don't know what their way. And so Frodo's like, ugh, okay. So he's like, okay, we're gonna leave at dawn or whatever, but like, do we have everything we need? And Mary's like, boy, we everything could be packed and ready to go in an hour.
Mm.
And he's like, oh my god,
Why are you so
what?
efficient?
So I think that's also cool. Like they've got it together.
Yes.
And I think like Mary and Pippin in the movies are a little bit more like haphazard.
Yeah, it's those aren't the vibes they're given
No.
Merry and Pippin in the movies.
Yeah. And it's like they are like adorable, typical hobbits that are maybe more on the silly side. But I think that they are a Brandy Buck and a Took, and they are ready to do what it takes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, just shout out to Mary and Pippin for being the bestest of friends.
Oh, the squad is coming for Rivendell.
Yes. So they're about to go into the Old Forest. In the movie, they hop on Buckleberry Ferry, and then it immediately cuts to them getting to Bree,
Mm-hmm.
which on the map is actually a lot further. Like, it makes it seem like they get there in like the same night. It's dark when it, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
obviously for pacing, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I get it. You had to cut Tom Bombadil,
Yeah.
who we're going to talk about next episode. And but it's just funny because it's like it's almost like they took the map and like folded it and then stitched it right there so that it's like boop
You
instead of
gotta.
you know
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of where that leaves us story wise. But some fun facts about this is that, so we're continuing to see some Hobbit songs in this section. We've already mentioned one when they're in the woods. um
It won't be an
but
episode if Andrea does not talk about a poem or a song.
I mean, it's not Tolkien if we don't talk about a poem or a song. So, let's see. What is the song that they're singing when they first run into the Nazgul? Okay, so that's where they're. This is when they're in the woods and they're like chilling and they feeling pretty safe, and before they hear the screaming, if you want to call it that.
They're
So,
chatting with each other, the
yeah.
Nazgul.
So there's yeah.
Is that what their screaming is?
I guess I feel like I feel like they must have heard them. Um, I feel like it's implied that they've heard the hobbits, but they don't exactly know where they are. They know they're in the woods, in this like stretch of woods that's between some more farmland in the Marish,
Mm-hmm.
like in between there and Buckland. And so they're like eating and they're like, "Oh, it's a nice day." And then they start singing, and then the Nazgul are like, "Hey, I think they're somewhere over here." And then the another Nazgul's like, "Cool, cuz I haven't heard anything." I have no idea what they're saying. This is just me. It's a scream, people. I
Right.
don't know.
You
I
don't
don't know.
translate the Nazgul scream.
But this is what I imagine they were saying. Um, I wonder if the Nazgul know how evil they are.
Toads. They seem
Can they?
very prideful of like their spooky vibes, so they
Yeah.
gotta know.
I guess they've been dealing with it for a long time. Because I'm gonna bet that when they realized that the rings that they had been given weren't just to make them more powerful, because like they enjoy some success because of the rings for some time before they start to fade into nothingness.
Darkness.
But and I they must resent Sauron for that though. I feel like evil people are always mad at everybody. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe they did just want to live forever and they would do whatever it took to do that, and so now they're kind of doing that.
Like,
But
well, I asked for this, so
maybe
you know.
I
That was my
absolutely
Nazgul sniffing. I don't know if it
I
was
love
good
it.
or not.
Yeah, I think it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty accurate.
Gosh,
Um
I just need it. I need someone to like. I need to
I
see it.
know.
I just so crazy.
I think that a Witch King spin-off show would be excellent.
I would not be mad.
Yeah. I think if they don't become characters at some point, I don't even think they have to have a big storyline, but if they don't make an appearance somewhere towards the end of these seasons of Rings of Power, it's going to be a big miss.
I mean, like at least for some fan service. Hopefully
Yeah.
they.
Yeah, cuz I think they would be an excellent spin-off series cuz there's so much that happens in the Third Age before we even get to Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
Like this is the end of the Third Age. This is the last year or so of the Third Age when all of this action happens. So there's this whole bit where the Witch King is he's
Sorry,
like
Josh is
taken over.
cooking.
What are you eating?
Uh, Salmon and veggies. So I can just tell by
What kind of
my
fish can pregnant people eat?
audio thing that
Salmon.
sometimes you're picking up his movement, but there's nothing we can do about that. So I'm saying sorry to your Josh ahead of time.
Say what?
I'm saying sorry to your Josh ahead of time.
Oh.
That's it's not perfectly
Why?
sad. It's not perfectly quiet.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. I can always just like dip you out if I need
Ah, okay.
to. But yeah, I think it would make an excellent spin-off dealing with because the Witch King goes to war with like the remainder of the kingdom left in Eriador, like a parts of Arnor, which is like that part of the other side of the Misty Mountains. Like
Oh,
the
okay.
Shire is near it. This is all still a part of. So like later when Aragorn becomes king, he's not only king of Gondor, but he's also king of like this part of the map, west of the Misty Mountains, because essentially his ancestors had set up kingdoms on both sides.
Okay.
So, but he like gifts the Shire to the Hobbits. But anyway, there's like the Witch King sets up shop north of there and goes to war with the men of Arnor, and it's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, write Amazon right now. Tell them
I
you want to
know,
see that.
I know. I should find that email and be like, hey, if like I know that people aren't there are a lot of people that are highly skeptical of your Rings of Power show. But I think that if you do X, Y, and Z, you will have at least one viewer, and it's me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Two, because I'd watch it.
hey, there we go. We're building a market
Yeah.
here. Write to us on our socials and tell us if you would watch the Witch King of Angmar spin-off series. Like, no shoehorning in hobbits. No, actually, I think that you could actually put hobbits in it if you want, because there's a part where they say that hobbits sent some people to fight in some war at some point. It could
Whoa.
have been that one. So yeah, Maybe if enough people watch Rings of Power, we could get a spinoff.
I'm sure they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
I'm
They,
they're going to be fine cuz
yeah.
um when I this is just a tangent now, and
That's what this is.
HBO does this a lot, where like one show will end and then there'll be like a small
Mm.
break, and then you know that they're gearing up for another show. So like in the past it'd be like True Blood and Entourage, and then were they on at the same time? Then what was it? It was something like that. And then or it would have been Westworld and then The Leftovers, or like something like that, where
Mm.
they were always trying to keep you from canceling your subscription.
Totally.
Um, and yes, these are different platforms. I recognize that, but Game of Thrones will be ending around when, or theoretically, if they do 10 episodes, when
True.
Lord of the Rings starts. So I think that it was surely studios talk to each other. They don't
Yeah.
compete with each other, but also in the sense that like people who are watching Game of Thrones are just going to start watching Lord of the Rings because that will be over and they'll need something else to entertain themselves. So
Yeah.
it's
Totally. Because they wouldn't want to conflict with a major opening. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, I'm sure they won't want to like start at the same time as Witcher season 3 or something.
right, right.
You know, because it's like it's a similar fan base.
Yes, absolutely.
People interested in this probably also want to be interested in that. So
Yeah,
so on and so forth.
yes. So I'm not worried about their numbers.
Yeah. But will they give me the show that I'm specifically asking for?
They should. That's all I know is that they should.
Yeah, because that's also one where I think you could have a lot of fun with it, and like, I don't know, people are kind of giving them hell for like it's gonna be corporate fan fiction, but like, I'm not worried about that. Like, they don't have nearly the same amount of material to work with, um, so it's gonna be them kind of working with what they got, making
Hmm.
the stuff in between. But I think with The Witch King, it's essentially like it could be so action packed that I don't think like trying to get the dialogue right or like it's gonna be as big of a deal.
Right. It'll be like The Witcher, where
Yeah,
it's more action based. At least I think so than it is
yeah.
dialogue based.
Are you watching The Witcher for the dialogue?
Personally, I am not, but
Yeah,
it's
The
the
Witcher
last
is just
thing that's
kind of
important
like
about that show.
The Witcher is just kind of like fun to have on, right?
There are a couple things I like about it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, Henry
I
Cavill.
finally watched it. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's funny. I love that he's like a big old nerd.
yeah.
I just love that.
It's like you're not a real human because he is just. I've gotten enough weird, creepy tangents on this podcast already. I am not gonna do that on this episode.
We'll save The Witcher for a Henry Cavill for another day.
Yeah.
Who knows when? Um. But okay, so essentially they, if you want to hear any like the song changes that they made, do you? Do
you,
you?
we've got to conclude this somehow, and you
Okay.
want to talk about it, and I know you do. So please.
I just think it's cool. So they have so they sing this drinking song, and in the book it's ho ho to the bottle I go to heal my heart and drown my woe. Rain may fall and wind may blow, and many miles be still to go, but under a tall tree I will lie and let the clouds go sailing up by. So that's adorable. Very appropriate for the setting that they're in. But then they take that and then like the second verse of Bilbo's bath song, because note they all three go have a bath um when and they Mary has somehow, I do not understand Hobbit plumbing, but in Crick Hollow they have a bathroom and and Mary is like, I've got 3 tubs set up for y'all to take a bath so that you're can like have dinner and be clean.
Yeah.
um so and then Pippin sings this song, and like the only verse that they use, the second one, and oh sweet is the sound of the falling rain and the brook that leaps from hill to plain, but better than rain or rippling streams is water hot that smokes and steams. It's like literally about having a bath. And they combine these two, so it's like, hey ho, to the bottle I go to heal my heart and drown my woe. Rain may fall and wind may blow, and there's still be many miles to go. And then it cuts to sweet is the sound of the falling rain, pouring rain. I can't remember exactly how they changed that,
In the
but then
movies, yeah.
yeah, and then it ends with better than ra- rain or rippling brook or stream or rippling brook is a mug of beer inside this took. So they turn the bath song into a drinking song, and they
Hmm.
make this just one song, and that's the song that you hear them sing in the pub in that
Yeah.
extended edition scene.
Yeah.
Uh, so you know, Tolkien is just like sprinkling little poems throughout,
He loves
and
it.
yeah,
But
and there's so many.
it does also, like, do we not just do that in our regular lives? Like, it seems very making the characters seem a little bit more personable because we listen to
Yeah,
music all the time, we sing songs all the time. That's just a part of everyday life. So
yeah, just
hobbits be
like
doing it too.
yeah, makes it feel more lived in,
Yeah.
I would say. Um, so that is kind of those are kind of like the big differences in this section. And obviously like there's a lot that gets changed or cut out. And then in the next episode we're going to talk about Tom Bombadil, and we're also going to be talking about finally getting to Bree, because I think it would be, if you've only watched the movies, I don't want to just have an episode that is completely cut, from the movies. And if you're coming at this from just seeing the movies, like, I definitely want you to know about Tom Bombadil, but he's not crucial.
Hmm.
And some good stuff happens in Brie, so like I want something that you know about to be in the episode. So that's what we're going to be talking about next time. And we're actually going to have our first guest next time, and then
Ooh.
after that it's kind of going to be like lots of guests, until Two Towers, and then we'll see from there. But people have committed if everything works out great. So our first guest is Silmarimely on TikTok and on Twitter. I'm just gonna call her Emily next week, because she's combined like the Silmarillion and Emily
Yeah,
in
yeah.
her as her username, which I think is
I
funny.
follow. I follow.
Yeah, so she's gonna be our first guest, and we will see what happens next.
That's
Interested to hear her
exciting.
thoughts. Yeah. So so where does that leave us? So we're in the movie we're about to enter Bree, and here and then in the book we're gonna meet Tom Bombadil, see what we think about him as a character. So it's some people don't like him at all, some
Okay.
people do,
Okay.
and I will try to explain him to the best of my ability.
I'm sure you'll go
And
above and beyond.
and then we'll get to what happens in Bree, which I think is the most fun part of next episode.
Sounds good to me.
Great. So thank you so much for tuning in for another installment of Tolkien with Friends, and we'll see you next week.